Maccabees. I'm very excited about this. I've been wanting to read it. We are joined today with others from the Digital Readers Club. If you want to join, I believe they put the link in the chat for you to join. Please come on over and hang out with us and read. It's a wonderful time, a wonderful family. And welcome, everyone. So, Clark, would you do us the honors of praying us in?
Yeah, sure. I can do that.
Thank you.
Father, we just humble ourselves before you and ask that you would just guide our hearts and minds during this read and speak to us what you would have us to hear. Thank you for this time. In Jesus' name, amen. Sorry.
Thank you, Clark. So, how is
Amen.
everybody doing?
Oh, we're hanging in there. The guys are setting up for Hebrew class right after this downstairs. And yeah, how about you, Sharon? You said you're alive. That's a good thing.
We're doing good. It's on family vacation, and it was wonderful. At least it was cooler. But now
Oh,
it's back up in the 90s, and we'll probably hit the hundreds next week.
oh wow. My goodness. Okay, I'm not going to complain. We went to the beach yesterday. That was nice. Swimming around and we were on Maui this past week. Noble had some work over there, and it was a wonderful time of fellowship with like-minded believers in Yeshua. So that was really cool.
Oh, that is special whenever we can gather with others.
Oh yeah, yeah. In person is great. I mean, this is wonderful, but in person, awesome.
And you got the blessing to meet the Garcias in person when you guys made it to the mainland.
Yeah, that was really cool too. That was awesome. Just to felt like we already knew them, because we talked quite a bit, but to meet in person, that was just, it's always the best. Do that. Hope to meet all you guys too in person when we have the conference coming up in May. I believe Justin and Zen were talking about it throughout this past couple weeks. So
Zen, do you know the dates?
I think it's the 26th to the 28th of May.
Is it May or March?
May.
Okay, that's good.
Shalom, Zen.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
All right.
Can you all hear him?
Hey, Zan, you're a little bit low, brother.
All right. How's that?
That's
There we
we go.
go.
There, good.
All right. How are y'all doing today?
great.
We're doing well. We were just
Good.
discussing the conference. We were just chatting a little bit about the conference coming up in May.
Yeah, Their kids are putting all that together.
Yeah, we're
Is,
pretty excited.
is there a link for everybody to go to sign up for it?
I believe so, but I don't know what it is.
Okay.
You'll have to ask Justin and Joy.
Yeah,
And Joy is the webmaster, so she sets up all the websites.
there is a link in this past month's newsletter. If everyone is on the Sacred Word Publishing newsletter list, there's a information and sign up forms to volunteer to help at the conference in there too, and all the different areas that people could be of help if you're interested in doing that. So, y'all willing? We plan to be there too. We get to see Zen, Justin, Joy, Eliana, and meet Ezra. It's gonna be nice.
Yeah,
Thank
how
you, Lisa.
exciting. So I'm guessing Justin is doing daddy duty again this evening. Is that correct? Or did he
Yes.
say?
Yeah,
He
he
did.
did
Yes,
say
all we
that.
heard was babies.
We heard Ezra
Okay.
talking.
Yeah.
Ezra wanted to read Maccabees as well.
Yeah, right on. All right, well, we've got 5 minutes to catch up, and then we'll go forward. And I hope he does I'm pretty sure since he's logged in, he's probably doing the live stream for the YouTube audience. So, um, but
Yes.
yeah, so everybody's doing well. Thank you for joining us this evening.
It's our
Yeah,
pleasure.
it's a blessing to
It's a
be here.
pleasure.
Yes, amen.
Awesome, awesome. Oh, I'm glad that you guys are all blessed, and yeah, it was a good week here. Splitting the book, and then after that, I should be able to release it. And uh, oh, I forgot, I gotta send Justin something to set the pre-order stuff for everybody. But moving along, it shouldn't be far out at all, and so I'm excited for that.
Which book was that?
This is on the wisdom, the feminine aspect of the triune Godhead.
Yeah, you've been working on that for a while.
Yes, all this year, going back to, I think I started it in the spring, maybe even earlier than that. I think probably near the end of winter, but it has been this whole year,
Yeah, it
which
has been
I'm
most of the
glad
year.
that I've had the health and excuse me, the well-being to actually do it, because I wasn't good there for a little while to actually work on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, praise Father for your healing.
Yeah, what a grand blessing that has been.
And
So
how
that
many books for the Maccabees? Was there one or two?
We have a book called the Apocryphal Texts of the Maccabean Wars,
Mm-hmm.
and there's actually eight books of Maccabees.
Wow.
Yeah, most people are not familiar with the others. There's only four cited in the Apocrypha, and not even all of those are contained within this 1611. I think maybe just 1 and 2, but there are 8 books of Maccabees.
I remember
Which,
When I was in Bible college, they said, "Oh, we're going to do a study of the Apocrypha," and we were taught the only book in the Apocrypha was the Maccabees. I just thought that was really strange.
really,
And then yeah, and
that's so
I was
funny.
and I didn't I should have, but I didn't look into it further back then. So I just thought oh, that's just Maccabees until I started looking further into the extra biblicals later on.
Yeah, we don't know, and a lot of people are confused on all that. So,
Yeah,
um,
it's great you guys are published all of them together, and that we have a chance to read it all together with everyone to get further insight, because I remember reading through Maccabees back in college many years ago, and I just didn't understand what was going on. So I'm looking forward to this study.
yeah, I love those manuscripts because they're historical and they give us insight into, what happened after the Holy Temple was burnt down, and uh, they were fighting to restore and to keep their way of life, and it was a difficult time, but a lot of miracles too occurring during that time. But yeah, I think we should. Let me pull up the manuscript because it is that time.
So we're not
And
going to be reading from the 1611 King James Apocrypha?
yeah, we are.
Oh, we are? Oh, okay. Because I
Yeah.
don't think that has the 8, does it? Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
That's not what we're.
Okay.
I don't believe that's what we're reading tonight. But I got to pull up the readings. So.
We're
yeah,
reading
there's
the
only
first
3
Maccabee.
chapters.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Um, yeah, the first Maccabees. But yeah, like I said, the 1611 doesn't have all 8 manuscripts of the Maccabees, but we will read what is contained within them. And so,
Okay, I just
Brick,
didn't know whether you were going to pull it up on the screen, which I don't really know how to do.
no, no.
So,
Justin posts a link, and I'll put it in the chat room before we start.
oh,
But he
okay.
updates the reading that
Oh,
we're
we
going to
did
do
that.
every week.
Okay.
And actually, it's already posted there, but I'll go ahead and paste it again. Um, yeah,
Okay.
you can check this link every week, and it'll have the updated reading. But yeah, if you would, Brick, if you could start us off,
Yes,
brother.
sir. I'm all
All
queued
right, we
up.
appreciate it.
Okay, first
Excellent.
Maccabees. And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chedum and smited Dargus, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece, and made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth, and went through to the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, in so much that the earth was quiet before him. Whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up. And he gathered a mighty strong host, and ruled over countries and nations and kings, who became tributaries unto him. And after these things he felt sick, and preceded that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable, and had been brought up with him for his youth, and pardoned his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. Pass.
Clark, are you reading,
417.
brother?
Yeah.
Okay,
Me?
excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. Verse 7. So
Yes, sir.
Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, and his servants bare rule every one in his place. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been an hostage at Rome. And he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. Now, when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have the dominion of 2 realms. Wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and elephants and horsemen, and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt. But Ptolemy was afraid of him and fled, and many were wounded to death. Thus they got the strong cities in the land of Egypt, and he took the spoils thereof. And after that, Antiochus had smitten Egypt. He returned again in the 143rd year, and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude. he entered proudly into the sanctuary and took away the golden altar and the candlestick of light and all the vessels thereof, and the table of the showbread, and the pouring vessels, and the vials, and the censers of gold, and the veil, and the crown, and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. He took also the silver and the gold and the precious vessels. Also he took the hidden treasures which he found. And when he had taken all away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre and spoken very proudly. Therefore, there was a great mourning in Israel, in every place where they were. Pass.
So that the princes and elders mourned, the virgins and young men were made feeble, and the beauty of the women was changed. Every bridegroom took up lamentation, and she that sat in the marriage chamber was in heaviness. The land also was moved for the inhabitants thereof, and all the house of Jacob was covered with confusion. And after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute unto the cities of Judah, who came unto Jerusalem with a great multitude, and spake peaceable words unto them. But all was deceit. For when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city, and smote it very sore, and destroyed much people of Israel. And when he had taken the spoils of the city, he set it on fire, and pulled down the houses and walls thereof on every side. But the women and children took they captive, and possessed the cattle. They then builded they the city of David with a great and strong wall, and with mighty towers, and made it a stronghold for them. And they put therein a sinful nation, wicked men, and fortified themselves therein. They stored it also with armor and victuals, and when they had gathered together the spoils of Jerusalem, they laid them up there, and so they became a sore snare. For it was a place to lie in wait against the sanctuary, and an evil adversary to Israel. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary, and defiled it, insomuch that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them, whereupon the city was made an habitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her, and her own children left her. Her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning, her Sabbaths into reproach, her honor into contempt. As had been her glory, so was her dishonor increased, and her excellency was turned into mourning. Pass.
Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and every one should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed, according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem, and to the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbath and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. In the selfsame manner he wrote he to his whole kingdom, and appointed overseers over all the people, commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city. Then many of the people were gathered unto them, to wit, every one that forsook the law, and so they committed evils in the land.
And drove the Israelites into secret places, even wheresoever they could flee for succor. Now the 15th day of the month, Casleu, in the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar, and builded idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side, and burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. And when they had rented in pieces the books of the law, which they found, they burnt them with fire. And wheresoever was found with any the book of the testament, or if any consented to the law, the king's commandment was that they should put him to death. Thus did they by their authority unto the Israelites every month, to as many as were found in the cities. Now the 25th day of the month they did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of God. At which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised. And they hanged the infants about their necks, and rifled their houses, and slew them that had circumcised them. Howbeit many in Israel were fully resolved and confirmed in themselves not to eat any unclean thing. Wherefore they chose rather to die, that they might not be defiled with meats, and that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died. And there was very great wrath upon Israel. Pass.
Chapter 2. In those days arose Mattathias, the son of John, the son of Simeon, a priest of the sons of Joarib, from Jerusalem, and dwelt in Modin. And he had 5 sons, Joanna called Cadiz, Simon called Thasi, Judas, who was called Maccabeus, Eleazar, called Avaran, and Jonathan, whose surname was Appius. And when he saw the blasphemies that were committed in Judah and Jerusalem, he said, Woe is me! Wherefore was I born to see this misery of my people, and of the holy city, and to dwell there when it is delivered into the hands of the enemy, and sanctuary into the hands of strangers? Her temple is become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets, her young men with the sword of the enemy. What nation hath not had a part in her kingdom, and gotten of her spoils? All her ornaments are taken away. Of a free woman she is become a bond slave. And behold, our sanctuary, even our beauty and our glory, is laid waste, and the Gentiles have profaned it. To what end, therefore, shall we live any longer? Then Mattathias and his sons rent their clothes, and put on sackcloth, and mourned very sore. In the meanwhile, the king's officers, such as compelled the people to revolt, came into the city Modin, to make them sacrifice. And when many of Israel came unto them, Mattathias also and his sons came together. Then answered the king's officers, and said to Mattathias on this wise, Thou art a ruler, and an honorable and great man in this city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. Now therefore come thou first and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathen have done, yea, and the men of Judah also, and such as remain at Jerusalem. So shall thou and thy house be in the number of the king's friends, and thou, thy children, shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards. Pass.
Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice, though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him, and fall away every one from the religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. God forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words, to go from our religion, either on the right hand or the left. Now, when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar which was at Modin, according to the king's commandment. Which thing, when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled. Neither could he forbear to show his anger according to judgment. Wherefore he ran, and he slew him upon the altar. Also the king's commissioner, who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down. Thus dealt he zealously for the law of God, like as Phinehas did unto Zambri, the son of Salem. And Mattathias cried throughout the city with a loud voice, saying, Whosoever is zealous of the law, and maintaineth the covenant, let him follow me. So he and his sons fled into the mountains, and left all that ever they had in the city. Then many that sought after justice and judgment went down into the wilderness to dwell there, both they and their children and their wives and their cattle, because afflictions increased sore upon them. Now, when it was told the king's servants and the host that was at Jerusalem and the city of David, that certain men who had broken the king's commandment were gone down into the secret places in the wilderness, they pursued after them a great number, and having overtaken them, they camped against them and made war against them on the Sabbath day. And they said unto them, Let that which ye have done hereto suffice. Come forth and do according to the commandment of the king, and ye shall live. But they said, We will not come forth, neither will we do the king's commandment to profane the Sabbath day. So then they gave them the battle with all speed. Howbeit they answered them not, neither cast they a stone at them, nor stopped the places where they lay hid, but said, Let us die in all our innocency. Heaven and earth will testify for us that they put us to death wrongfully. So they rose up against them in battle on the Sabbath, and they slew them, with their wives and children and their cattle, to the number of 1,000 people. Now when Mattathias and his friends understood thereof, they mourned for them right sore. And one of them said to another, If we all do as our brethren have done, and fight not our lives and laws against the heathen, we will now quickly root us out of the earth. Pass.
At that time, therefore, they decreed, saying, Whosoever shall come to make battle with us on the Sabbath day, we will fight against him, neither will we die all. As our brethren that were murdered, I'm the secret places. Then came there unto him a company of Assyrians, who were mighty men of Israel, even all such as were voluntary, devoted unto the law. Also all they that fled for persecution joined themselves unto them, and were a stay unto them. So they joined their forces and smote sinful men in their anger, and wicked men in their wrath. But the rest fled to the heathen for succor. Then Mattathias and his friends went round about and pulled down the altars. And what children soever they found within the coast of Israel uncircumcised, those they circumcised valiantly. They pursued also after the proud men, and the work prospered in their hands. So they recovered the law out of the hands of the Gentiles, and out of the hand of kings, neither suffered they the sin to triumph. Now, when the time drew near that Mattathias should die, he said unto his sons, Now hath pride and rebuke gotten strength, and the time of destruction and the wrath of indignation. Now therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the law, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers. Call to remembrance what acts our fathers did in their time, so shall ye receive great honor and everlasting name. Was not Abraham found faithful in temptation, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness? Joseph, in the time of his distress, kept the commandment and was made Lord of Egypt. Phanes, our father, in being zealous and fervent, obtained the covenant of an everlasting priesthood. Jesus, for fulfilling the word, was made a judge in Israel. Caleb, for bearing witness before the congregation, received the heritage of the land. Pass.
David, for being merciful, possessed the throne of an everlasting kingdom. Elias, for being zealous and fervent for the law, was taken up into heaven. Ananias, Azarias, and Misael, by believing, were saved out of the flame. Daniel, for his innocency, was delivered from the mouth of lions. And thus consider ye throughout all ages, that none that put their trust in him shall be overcome. Fear not then the words of a sinful man, for his glory shall be dung and worms. Today he shall be lifted up, and tomorrow he shall not be found, because he is returned into his dust, and his thought is come to nothing. Wherefore, ye, my sons, be valiant, and show yourselves men in the behalf of the law. For by it shall ye obtain glory. And behold, I know that your brother Simeon is a man of counsel. Give ear unto him alway. He shall be a father unto you. As for Judas Maccabeus, he hath been mighty and strong, even from his youth up. Let him be your captain, and fight the battle of the people. Take also unto you all those that observe the law, and avenge ye the wrong of your people. Recompense fully the heathen, and take heed to the commandments of the law. So he blessed them, and was gathered to his fathers. And he died in the 146th year, and his sons buried him in the sepulchres of his fathers at Modin. And all Israel made great lamentation for him. Pass.
Then his son Judas, called Maccabeus, rose up in his stead, and all his brethren helped him, and so did all they that held with his father. And they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Israel. So he gat his people great honor, and put on a breastplate as a giant, and girt his warlike harness about him. And he made battles, protecting the host with his sword. In his acts he was like a lion, and like a lion's whelp roaring for his prey. For he pursued the wicked, and sought them out, and burnt up those that vexed his people. Wherefore the wicked shrunk for fear of him, and all the workers of iniquity were troubled, because salvation prospered in his hand. He grieved also many kings, and made Jacob glad with his acts, and his memorial is blessed forever. Moreover, he went through the cities of Judah, destroying the ungodly out of them, and turning away wrath from Israel, so that he was renowned unto the utmost part of the earth, and he received unto him such as were ready to perish. Then Apollonius gathered the Gentiles together in a great host out of Samaria to fight against Israel. Which thing when Judas perceived, he went forth to meet him, and so he smote him and slew him. Many also fell down slain, but the rest fled. Wherefore Judas took their spoils, and Apollonius' sword also, and therewith he fought all his life long. Now when Seiron, a prince of the army of Syria, heard say that Judas had gathered unto him a multitude and company of the faithful to go out with him to war, he said, I will get me a name and honor in the kingdom, for I will go fight with Judas and them that are with him, who despise the king's commandment. And so he made him ready to go up, and there went with him a mighty host of the ungodly to help him, and to be avenged of the children of Israel. And when he came near to the going up of Betharon, Judas went forth to meet him with a small company, who, when they saw the host coming to meet them, said unto Judas, how shall we be able, being so few, to fight against so great a multitude, and so strong, seeing we are ready to faint with fasting all this day? Unto whom Judas answered, it is no hard matter for many to be shut up in the hands of a few, and with the God of heaven it is all one, to deliver with a great multitude or a small company. For the victory of battle standeth not in the multitude of an host, but strength cometh from heaven. They come against us in much pride, and iniquity destroy us and our wives and children, and to spoil us. But we fight for our lives and our laws. Wherefore the Lord himself will overthrow them before our face. And as for you, be ye not afraid of them. Pass.
Now, as soon as he had left off speaking, he leapt suddenly upon them, and so Saron and his host was overthrown before him. And they pursued them from the going down of Beth Horon unto the plain, where were slain about 800 men of them, and the residue fled into the land of the Philistines. Then began the fear of Judas and his brethren, and an exceeding great dread to fall upon the nations round about them, insomuch as his fame came unto the king, and all nations talked of the battles of Judas. Now, when King Antiochus heard these things, he was full of indignation. Wherefore he sent and gathered together all the forces of his realm, even a very strong army. He opened also his treasure and gave his soldiers pay for a year, commanding them to be ready whensoever he should need them. Nevertheless, when he saw that the money of his treasures failed, and that the tributes in the country were small, because of the dissension and plague which he had brought upon the land, in taking away the laws which had been of old time, he feared that he should not be able to bear the charges any longer, nor to have such gifts to give so liberally as he did before, for he had abounded above the kings that were before him. Wherefore, being greatly perplexed in his mind, he determined to go into Persia, there to take the tributes of the countries, and to gather much money. So he left Lysias, a nobleman and one of the blood royal, to oversee the affairs of the king from the river Euphrates unto the borders of Egypt, and to bring up his son Antiochus until he came again. Moreover, he delivered unto him the half of his forces and the elephants, and gave him charge of all things that he would have done as concerning them that dwell in Judah and Jerusalem, to wit, that he should send an army against them to destroy and root out the strength of Israel and the remnant of Jerusalem, and to take away their memorial from that place, and that he should place strangers in all their quarters and divide their land by lot. Pass. And Noble's not reading this time.
Okay. So the king took the half of the forces that remained and departed from Antioch, his royal city. The 147th year, and having passed the river Euphrates, he went through the high countries. Then Lysias chose Ptolemy, the son of Dorymenes, Nicanor, and Gorgias, mighty men of the king's friends, and with them he sent 40,000 footmen and 7,000 horsemen to go into the land of Judah and to destroy it, as the king commanded. So they went forth with all their power, and came and pitched by Emmaus in the plain country. And the merchants of the country, hearing the fame of them, took silver and gold very much with servants, and came into the camp to buy the children of Israel for slaves. A power also of Syria and of the land of the Philistines joined themselves unto them. Now when Judas and his brothers saw that the miseries were multiplied, and that the forces did encamp themselves in their borders, for they knew how the king had given commandment to destroy the people and utterly abolish them, they said one to another, let us restore the decayed fortune of our people, and let us fight for our people and the sanctuary. Then was the congregation gathered together, that they might be ready for battle, and that they might pray and ask mercy and compassion. Now Jerusalem lay void as a wilderness. There was none of the children that went in or out. The sanctuary also was trodden down, and the aliens kept the stronghold. The heathen had their habitation in that place, and joy was taken from Jacob, and the pipe with the harp ceased. Wherefore the Israelites assembled themselves together and came to Maspha, over against Jerusalem, for in Maspha was the place where they prayed aforetime in Israel. Pass.
Hold on just a second. Because the reading is supposed to stop after verse 31.
Oh.
And what verse are we on now? I know we
47.
went past it. Okay,
Yeah,
it's all
Yeah, I
right.
was
we're
We'll
gonna
just
say because I ran out at
yeah,
31.
right. Yeah, I did too, but I didn't want to, stop. Just jump in.
okay.
So
I'm reading from the book.
I'll be sure. Yeah, no, that's good, and it was good to hear up until that point. But we do have 15 minutes for discussion, and so um, as far as these particular texts, the Maccabean Wars, uh, Judas Maccabeus, he is definitely one of the heroes, and you'll find that his family were the ones that the stories are kind of centered upon, and his brothers, and even his father we see was the one that had you know gathered together all those that were vigilant for the law and to fight against the pagans and the Gentiles that were surrounding them. But and so as we move through the Maccabee text, this will all come forth, and it's interesting because again it shows us a part of history that is excluded and that we don't know about, and I think it's important that we know the full history of all that Israel had to overcome and had set before them as far as obstacle. Definitely, we know that according to the vision of Daniel and the statue, that the Greeks followed up, and that they were to be one of the mighty empires that would take over, and that they would give way later. That we would have the Persians, the Greek, the Medes, and the Romans afterwards. But Alexander did, and he's described, as the little horn in Scripture, and he was one of those that did unify the world under a great empire, and that dying young, he split his kingdom into fours amongst his generals, and that they waged war against each other, and this is part of that story. And so, anybody for comment or question or anything that you want to highlight or emphasize?
There's a lot in the text. It's really a great text. Requires reading several times for sure. It sounds a lot here as we were reading, coming up to the end, like verse 27. Um, when Antiochus heard these things, he was full of indignation, and he opened his treasure and gave it. It sounds like what we read in Judith, right, with Holofernes and
Yeah,
Nebuchadnezzar.
right.
Same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all these conquerors, they especially have this syndrome where they think of themselves above all of the other people, and even assume supernaturalness, that they in some manner believe themselves to be gods, or convince themselves that they're deities of some nature, which they're men. They're gonna die. They're gonna pass away. They are not immortal. They don't have long
Hmm.
lives, and yet their pride, their arrogance, it convinces them otherwise.
I thought it was just so much detail at the end of chapter 1 of what they would do to the infants and the women, and all because they're
Right.
like circumcised. It's not, they were circumcised. And this is the same Antiochus Epiphanes that is the in verse 59 where it refers to sacrificing upon the
Yes.
altar an idol. Is that where he sacrificed a
Yes.
pig? That's the pig, right?
Yes.
Oh,
Right.
okay, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
And
put these things together.
yeah, and that's that's one of the stories as far as the abomination of desolation
Right.
connection with that. Um, because they defiled the temple, and um, later, they would bring idols in as well. And when we get to Maccabees 4, he tries to bring the high priest Eleazar and his 7 children, tries to force him to eat food sacrificed unto idols so that the rest of the people would follow his lead, but he remains defiant. And so, but that's a later story and a later aspect of what will be. But they did as much as they could to try to, force the Israelites to assimilate pagan ways and to defile their faith and to go against their God. And um, there was always an elect, a remnant, a righteous aspect of Israel that refused to do so, and remaining steadfast and honoring their traditions, they were led through the darkness and into the light. So, and I
Oh,
think that's the whole point of these stories.
thank you for explaining that. I was trying to put these connections together here. But thank you.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Couldn't get it.
Yeah, I think it's an important something for us to consider as well, because our nation is in similar state right now. We see the wickedness, the occult, and all these things coming forth in great manner. And Christianity, as far as true Christianity, is taking a back seat. There's no longer, as far as the seekers of truth, um, we're becoming very rare uh, in the population. Most people now, even with the platforms for truth, those things are so full of disinformation, and propaganda is spread so thickly. It's it just blows my mind how anybody can really come to understand as much as we've been blessed to have discernment on now, because those avenues for clearing your mind and finding discernment, they don't exist in the manner that they did even a decade ago. So things are much more difficult and remain much hidden and veiled, um, so that it would be a lot more difficult for people to really find the way,
Especially the
which is
children.
unfortunate. Yeah, especially the
Um,
children.
It's
Um,
sad.
yeah, it's horrible because with their disconnection, the whole thing of scientism and how it's convinced them, and the educational process that evolution is a thing, that we evolved in monkeys. There's all just life just came about of random
Mm-hmm.
circumstance, that all these lies and all these deceptions, and how all the ancient alien stuff is coming to the forefront, and they're much more susceptible to accepting all of that than anything, or wanting anything to do with Christianity, because most of the churches, the majority opinion out there, they are not teaching anything in regard to truth, in my opinion. I mean, of course, yes, there are some voices and some ministries and some peoples that do have discernment, but the elect is but a few, and those that truly have the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and a mind to understand, I believe are few and far in between. And so, there's not a lot of groups like what we're able to have and share with each other. And there's not a lot of people even reading their Bibles, much less all of the other texts. And so I think these things are important to our generation, because they show to us historically how other nations and times, and kingdoms fell, and certainly America is falling apart at the seams.
Yeah, I totally agree, Zen. And if any of us would try to even go back into like the major churches, it would even become more obvious, I think, because it seems like we're in a time now, especially with the younger generation, where they're not reading their Bibles, like you said. They're not reading scripture. They're not seeking the truth, but instead they're more like upholding their pastors and hanging on every word the pastor says instead of seeking it
Yes,
out for their own. Instead of
right,
saying, "Oh, I attend so and so church," they say, "Oh, I'm under pastor so and so and so."
right,
I've seen that
yes,
shift in the last 20 years or so.
right, right. And they are leaning so much on the pastors for interpretation, and yet so few of them, in my opinion, even understand even the King James, much less other manuscripts. And so it's the blind leading the blind out there. And because of that, I mean, they are just walking off of a cliff.
That's why we have to pray
Yes,
that they'll have their
agreed.
eyes opened, and they will, question the science, because
Right.
especially when the alien thing is coming front and foremost now, it's
Hmm.
going to lead them down the wrong path. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do believe that that is part of the strong delusion that will lead even the most elect to deceive even
Yeah.
the most elect, should it be possible. And so, um, yeah, a lot of people are going to be caught up in that deception, and I think that that is connected to the Antichrist. That whole theme, the scientism, the ever expanding universe, the ancient aliens coming from some galaxy far away, and
Yeah.
that they're way ahead of us, way advanced, and all of this. And so, yeah, we're gonna see more and more of that as we move into the future, in my opinion.
It seems like it's rolling out fast too, like
I
a
agree.
snowball.
Right, right. Because those things are deeply rooted and connected to the occult and to the ancient religions, and people are embracing a lot of that. They're because they think that the ancient aliens are gods and are creators, and because of that, they're praying to the Sumerian deities,
Hmm.
Yeah.
and they think that these are the true gods. They worship Enki and Enlil and Ishtar and things like that,
I think
and
there's
that's the
yeah, go
wrong
ahead,
way.
sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead, Clark.
Yeah, no, I was just going to agree. Say, from my perspective, there seems to be a little increase. There's a rise in paganism. I mean, it's blatant. I'm not just throwing a
Oh,
word
certainly.
out there. I mean, they actually have a text they follow and
Right,
promoting it really heavy. Um,
right. Yeah, Scientology is, if you know anything about that, that's part of their belief system. Is that the ancient aliens are
right.
the creators of humanity?
And you get your own planet when you die.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Just to add, the way you worded it was real good. You packaged it up for us to, which I totally agree. All these stories are connected that way, and they're showing us it's like a pattern that keeps repeating. And I thought it was interesting here in like verse 11, chapter 2, First Maccabees, says all her ornaments are taken away. Of a free woman, she's become a bondslave. Well, the ornaments
Hmm.
of the temple, it means God's law, and the worship of God is actually freedom. And
Yes, absolutely.
right, when that's taken away, then it's the opposite. Pretty,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we've seen that even with the Exodus, how they were under the Egyptian nation, and their kings in that empire, they were considered the mightiest. And,
Right.
and it wasn't until Moshe led them and God freed them from that bondage, and brought them to his presence directly, that they learned different. And then Israel was established as a nation of prophets and became the mightiest for a time, before falling away again. But we are at 9 p.m. and so we're going to end it here. And so those of you that can and are wanting can join Lisa and Noble for the Noble Truth and for their teaching. And it's always a pleasure. I hope that you have a blessed evening, all of you. And of course, thank you for joining us. I was just earlier today listening to the first Targum study that we did, and it was 3 years ago, it said. And it was such a beautiful study, and it's so awesome to see how this fellowship has grown. And so I really honor all of you and appreciate you, and thank you as my brothers and sisters for joining me in this fellowship.
Right on.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity, but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.